Thank you for having me here again. I've spoken with Yvonne's group a number of times, and it's always a pleasure to come back. The last time that I spoke was at her group, but it was at the ASCSI conference, and I spoke twice with another person who also has pre-birth memories. We found each other, and we both remember each other from that realm, and which is very unusual. And he told me about some other people, 2 women that also recently contacted him, and he gave me their phone numbers. And so I waited a while because this is so new to me and it just blew me away. But sure enough, I did have memories. When I contacted the first woman, I could not believe all the things that I had in my mind and hers, and they connected. And then later on, I contacted the other woman, and all of us do. We all remember each other. So it's true, and in the past there have been other people in this world who have pre-birth memories, but anytime they try to share, this world rejects it, and many people get murdered for it, you know. So it's something that's not easy to share, but yet it's true. And I think it's time, because when I first found out about Roy Mills, I do have his book with me, if I can get it over here so you can see his book. He wrote The Soul's Remembrance. I don't know if any of you have ever read it, but he was born on earth with his veil very thin, and he remembers heaven from the very beginning. When he was a baby, he knew what was going on around him. He didn't have the baby mind, and he had abilities that go in and out of his body at will, out of body experiences. No, I didn't have that, but he did. And another person that I connected with is Karen Baldwin. And you have a copy of her newer version, but this is the version that I bought. She has a couple versions. They're basically the same book. It's just she just updated it. But she has pre-birth memories, and she talks about it in her book too. But when Roy told me about these people, I never knew them. So it was just really hard for me. It took me many years to finally say, okay, this is real, this is true. Even though I knew it's true, something inside me is just like, whoa, this is too woo-woo out there, But after I read Roy's book, I told him I had a near-death experience. He called me after I wrote to him, and he wanted to know about my near-death experience, so I shared it with him, and he was very open to it, because I was so happy, because my experience happened in 1984. And every time I tried to share it with family, they thought it was just a strong dream. And I said, it's more than a dream, because not one day goes by I don't think about it. It's always with me. It's always in my thoughts, in my heart. Because in 1984, I went to the light, and I was in the presence of God. And that just changed my whole perception about religion. And I now have I embrace everyone, no matter what their religion is, because we're all connected. God made all of us. And religions are not supposed to be in competition with each other, but it's because of our cultures and not understanding some things and being misinterpreted that religion's got to be, contrast and competition and all that kind of stuff, where it's not supposed to be that way. But I was shown a lot of things about religion, which I did share in my books, but it's because this is needed in the world to hear these messages. And I don't know, it's up to people whether they're going to be open to it or not. But it's trying to help people to embrace one another, because God created diversity. He didn't create us in diversity to fight, but to embrace one another and to learn how to get along and appreciate each other with respect and love above all, because we're all the same, we're all equal, we're all a part of God. And so anyways, I read Roy's book in May of 2000, and then that summer in August, my husband wanted me to read the book of Socrates, Plato's book, The Last Days of Socrates. And as I was reading it, I thought, well, it's philosophy. I didn't think it would be very interesting. But he talked about pre-birth memories, and in his mind, him and his colleagues proved that there is pre-existence. And because he talked about these things, they sentenced him to death, because the belief system in his day believed in multiple gods, and he was saying there's one God, that everything came from. And they didn't like the things he was saying, so he drank hemlock, and so they shut him up, So I waited a while, and as I'm thinking about this, when I turned to the very back of the page, is when it was on this page right here. When I opened up the page, this is when Yvonne was saying earlier, I was teleported back into the light. And I can recall, it's like I'm living it right now. It's not like the past. Even though it was before I came to Earth, I'm living it like it's the first time. And I'm with other people, and we're talking about Earth. And I'm not even thinking about this world. This world didn't exist to me then, because I'm there. And one of them, who is sort of like an overseer of our group, that we were discussing about coming to Earth, and he said, everything's already been said, everything's been done to help with people to have the truth. They have it. It's just that something's not connecting. And I said, what else can we say or do to help people? Because the main concern was all the wars done in the name of religion, in the name of God, which is not what religion was supposed to do. It was supposed to bring us together, not to separate us. So I was thinking in that realm. I think I can help people, to help them maybe with explaining by using positive and negative energy, the opposites, not that there isn't just an extreme of positive and negative, but you got everything in between, how everything have consequences of, if you choose this will happen, if you choose that'll happen. You have all these different outcomes. And so anyways, as soon as I said that, they started preparing me to come to Earth. And I need to deliver that message. So that's why I feel important, and why I'm coming out and sharing it. And that's what I wrote in my second book, is about the things that when I connected with Socrates. Because when I opened up the book and I was in that realm, I was shown that book. Someone came over and opened the book to the very pages that popped me back into the light. And I understood just by looking at that page, the book opened up in that realm, and I understood the whole book. And I said, something's missing. It wasn't finished, but that's because Socrates was murdered, so he didn't get to finish. And I said, I still have things that need to be said. And then the memory sort of flashed into, I was being prepared. I went to this place, and there was a platform that when I stepped on it, and I was with someone else, because two of them, those beings, escorted me over to this other area, and with the platform, and there's another guy they wanted me to talk to help me learn what it's going to be like to be here in this world, in this dimension, because it's totally different from that one. And he started saying, everything's half dark and half light, and I'm there, dark. I wasn't even thinking of that, because in heaven it's always light. There's no darkness at all. And it just permeates with love and security, and everybody's just getting along. Nobody has if anybody doesn't understand something, it's just a matter of what you're aware of. It's more about knowledge, not about who's right or wrong. But when I stepped on this platform, I was out and I saw the galaxy, and I saw the planets like I was out in space. Yvonne has that memory as well. And some of these other people, they talk about it in their books too. And I didn't know them. I'm having these memories, but I hadn't shared with them yet. And so these are the things that when we finally did get together, it just blew me away that they also had these memories. And it was like you were right there in outer space, like you're an astronaut, but you didn't need any suit or anything, but everything was real close. And but he was explaining about how the planets orbit, and And then sometimes it's in the dark, and then it rotates, and then it's in the light, you know, from the sun. And I said, oh, I know what you're talking about, you know, because at first you saying about light and dark, I've been thinking about the energies, like a positive and negative and things like that. So I said, I know what you mean. You're talking about like creation. I said, okay. And then I started talking to him about creation. And then I popped back, and I'm back on the couch where I was sitting when I was reading my book. And I was beside my husband. He was watching television, and I was beside him reading this book. And I just thought, whoa, what was that? And my eyes started welling up, and as they are now, just thinking about what just happened to me. And like, I didn't say anything to my husband at that time because I didn't know quite how to explain it to him. So anyways, eventually did, but I don't know, he quite understands it either, but I couldn't hide it because it was true. And in about 5 months after this experience, I decided to talk to Roy Mills about it because he has Prebirth Memories. So maybe some of this will make some sense to him. So this is like January of 2001. And I called him up, you know, I said, you know, I have some weird memories, and I don't know why or what that mean. And so he was very open. He was always gracious. He's such a kind heart. And so I shared with him, and he said, that happened. And they're like, how do you know it happened? You know, I'm telling my story. How do you know it happened? And he says, I have those memories too. And I said, so he started sharing with me. And he says, you know, yeah, I remember I was with someone, and I was showing them like the planets and things like that, and showing them. And then he said something about, because we're going back and forth saying, I was sharing what I remember, he shared what he was saying, and the memories connected. He was saying it from his perspective. And then we realized he was the one that was there with me, teaching me. He was that guide. He showed me the planets and everything. And he also told me about 2 other women. And it just blew me away. I said, oh my gosh. I said, you know, whatever I learned, you know, in religions never said anything about this to me. This just blew me away. I said, something's not right. How come nobody tells these things? They don't teach this in church. I mean, I wasn't raised in the church. I sort of like read the Bible on my own because, you know, my family they were Christians, but they weren't real, you know, they didn't go attend all the time. But I asked my mom, I said one time, why don't we go to church? And then she started taking me. But we only went for about 2 years. So I'm not really a church person, you know, until after I got married. And I wanted to raise my kids in the church. So that's when I became involved with the church. But it wasn't that far after. My son was born in 1983, and my experience in light was 1984. So I'm here like trying to share some things that I know is true, but I found out that I was kind of not treated good in the church because I shared. And I wouldn't share a lot, and I didn't share all these details, but some things that I knew about, you know, religion, that, you know, we're not supposed to be judging one another and sending people to hell, and all that stuff is nothing, it's not supposed to be that way. So these are things I'm trying to teach them to love one another. And then how can that possibly hurt anybody? You're teaching them to love one another. And anyways, I felt ostracized from my church, and it really hurt me because I put my whole heart into it. I love the children, and I was very involved for years. And when I left the church, it took me a long time to get over that because I felt like I was betrayed. The things that I was taught in church, you know, they talk about heaven, they talk about the angels, but yeah, when you face them face to face, put it in their face, they don't believe. And they're like, it's in the songs, the hymns you're singing, but they don't really understand. They say it, but they're not listening. So that was an ordeal to go through. And but anyways, it was like around Easter time, this is April 2001, where Roy and I both drove to Tam's house. We all live in different states because we wanted to meet each other since we all have connected memories from this place. I said, I got to get to the bottom of this. I mean, either it's going to be true or something's going to fall through and it's just going to, you know, one way or the other. I'm going to find the truth. But so I stayed at Tam's house for a couple nights. Roy could only stay one night. His wife was with him, you know, and she was sick, so he had to go home early. He didn't want to go, but, you know, because we stayed up like till 3 o'clock in the morning talking about our pre-birth memories, and just, oh my God, it just blew me away. All the things that we talked about and how we all have memories. And Roy would talk about being in this. Everything looked white, so you don't really see walls or ceilings or anything. It just looked white, bright white, like you're inside of a light bulb or something. It's just real white, but it doesn't hurt your eyes, and it's very comforting. You feel safe and love. And but when we're there, we were all lined up. There's different places in heaven, but in this particular event, we were lined up facing the front, and there was a throne. And sure enough, I didn't remember this till after Roy was sharing this with me and Tam. And he said that, you know, he wanted to ask God a question. And he was permitted to, and so he went forward. And when he went up to God, he couldn't, at this time, we couldn't see God. It was just like brilliant white light. Couldn't see any physical features in the spirit, you know, even though it's not like us, you know, it's still different. But God led him, and he went into the light, and Roy thought that none of us could see him or hear him. But I was there, I remember, because after he said, it was like if you held an egg up to the light and you see the inside yolk. And as soon as he said that, it popped, and I remembered that incident. I was there, and I know what he said is true because I witnessed it. And I said, you know, I heard it. I was there. I remember. And he said that when he looked around at everybody there in heaven, a lot of us had spots. And you know, and my understanding, it was, and Karen talks about in her book, and I didn't read her book at that time, but she says it's like not really sins, but it's like the areas in us that we need to learn. It's where we weren't knowledgeable, and they sort of showed up, because when you're in that bright light, right in God's presence, God sees you, He knows what you need to learn. I mean, He just knows. And those were, the little spots are kind of indications of where they need to learn. I don't know, it means something in the spirit world, not here, but there. So, anyways, I told him, you know, you're not alone, because I was there and I know it happened. So I'm testifying to it that did happen. And then after he shared that story, Tam started telling a story, but she directed it towards me, but she didn't say that I had anything to do with it. But she said, you know, I remember in this area where there was a building, and Rory calls it the library, you know, in heaven, or but it was sort of like a Greek architecture, like the Pantheon, and it was like a real beautiful white pearlescent marble. I mean, it's just beautiful. And when I remember coming down the steps, no, I'm going ahead of myself, because I didn't remember that part yet, not until I talked to Karen. But beside that building, there is a field to the left, and then this beautiful field. It's just, the grass is so pretty green. It was soft like feathers. I mean, just, it was maybe like about a foot tall. And Karen was sitting on a wall that was way to the left, and she was sad. Not Karen, I meant Tam. Tam was sitting on the wall, and she was sad. And she was telling us why she was sad. And that was about it, because it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, so we decided to go to bed because we're so tired and exhausted from talking so much. So the next morning, as I was dreaming, I dreamt this, and I had more detail than what she said, what she had just told me the night before. And it popped in my mind. I dreamt about it all night long. So I said, I can't wait till she wakes up so I can share with her and see if it connects. And sure enough, yeah, she said that happened. She said, what I said I remember is there was a guardian. I don't really know what words you give these people were in that realm. It's different. I don't know, but just using our language. She came over because I wanted to, I was in the field and I was playing with our children, and we were kicking the ball and trying to hide it in the grass. And then we were sort of using, what is that word again? Not telepathy, but...
you could locate with your mind.
Yeah. We weren't looking at it, but we were sensing it. No, there's a word again. I can't ever remember what that means. But I sensed the ball.
Remote viewing.
Yeah, kind of like that. But we were trying to find the ball that was hiding in the grass, but not by looking at it. Just like, I know where it is, and then go get it. And then I said, then one of them kicked the ball past me, and so I went over to get it. And when I did, and I'm turned around that way, I see Tam, well, the one that was telling the story, and I realized it was her. And she was on the wall, sitting on the wall, and she was sad. And exactly what she was telling me, and I knew why she was sad. And then I said, why don't you play with us instead of sitting on the wall being sad? I said, and I didn't understand that. And so all of a sudden this guardian comes and stops me. She said, she wants to be alone. So in that realm, you respect each other. And so I said, well, I don't understand why she wants to be sad. She could be playing with us, having fun. And the guardian says, no, you can't. She wants to be alone. So I looked up at her, Tam, and she looked at me, and I still can see this in that realm. And she says, no, it's okay. I just want to be alone. And I said, okay. So I turned around and went back to play. And when I was telling Tam this, she said she thought that was me. And when she was telling me the night before, but she said she hoped that guard, I is one that remembered, she said that she hoped that she didn't hurt my feelings. I said, no, I understood, because she wasn't mean. She was just trying to protect her boundary. And I said, I totally understand. It didn't hurt my feelings, I just didn't want her to be sad. But so these are just some of the examples of how we connected. And then, it was amazing to be there and have this confirmation. But with me, I needed this confirmation because I wanted to say this is just too hard to believe. But yet I did believe, but yet something was stopping me, So it was a conflict within me. And but it took me years really to embrace this. And I finally am. I'm comfortable with it, but I still have trouble sometimes sharing it with other people. Not so much here because we are open to spirituality, and so it's easier to share with people like you. But out in the world, the people there, it seems like the ones that are most religious are the ones that wants to think you're talking from Satan or something. And I'm like, no, because that's love. Why in the world would Satan have so much power? You're giving Satan all this power. It's give God the glory, because it's all about love. That's not what Satan's about, So I was just amazed with all the information that I learned, and it seemed like the more I'd think about it, the more things would come. They just kept coming and coming. And then eventually, the Holy Spirit, I would call it the Holy Spirit, but I don't know whatever name you want to call it, but the Spirit came upon me and showed me and taught me things. And the Bible talks about it, and the Quran talks about it. All these different religions talk about it, but yet I don't think, it's just like in the church before, they say it, but they're not understanding it. It's there, it's true. But, but it's just something isn't quite connecting with them what it's really saying. And so I opened up to more memories, and I connected to someone, and it's related to Islam. And I wrote about it in the back of my book, and trying to help people to learn that, that we need to get back on track. Get back to the path of peace and love, because that's what it's about. And as long as we're on that path, we're doing good, and God will help us along that path. But if we're on the side of those who are trying to control and manipulate people and telling people to kill one another, why would God create some diversity and then have us kill each other? It's just insane. Why would God do such a thing when God is merciful and compassionate? He's full of love. That's the path. And so I will stop there, I guess. I give you a little summary. That was a very short summary, really. And open up because I think Yvonne wanted to have more questions than answer. So,
would you like to explain the episode where you were in that class teaching to come on Earth, and then with the other friends, and also when you were preparing your life on Earth with the two angels?
Okay.
That'd be great.
All right. All of us remember this. And I do have, I typed up some of the things that were in their books. So I wouldn't have to take too much time to get to the pages. This is from Roy's book on page 94. He said, my angel guide had taken me to a room with a lot of seats, like an auditorium. She had me sit near the front and told me to face forward and not turn around. I have the same memory. That was what I remembered. Then she left, and soon I heard giggling coming from behind me, and when I turned around, he turned around. He was not supposed to. I had that memory because he did it. And see who was making the sound, and I saw three little spirits like me, and they ended up being his children that was going to be on Earth later. So he knew them in that realm before coming here. And then when I talked to Karen Baldwin, is the name of her book. Do I have it out here? You have, it is here. The Awakening, but this is an older version. She's made 3 revisions. There's one called, the second one's also Awakening, but it's the blue and purple background. And then she did a third one that has a yellow, and it's just called Awakened, past tense. But they're basically the same book. It's just being updated. But when I talked with Karen on the phone, we talked for about an hour, and it just blew me away. She says, don't you remember when we were in that room, there's this bright light in the middle of the room? I said, I don't know, I didn't turn around because it was in the middle and I was towards the front. And she said, and that was God's presence, But she was telling me things, and I was telling her, I said, I was sitting on the front row, and she said, row? She says, that's not right, there weren't any benches. And I said, no, I don't mean benches. I said, we all had our own individual chairs lined up beside each other, and they were in rows. And she says, that's right. I said, okay. And every time, I'd say one sentence, she'd stop me again and say, no, that's not right. And I had to clarify it. And she said, yeah, okay, that's all right. And that kept on going on for a while. And I said, then Roy stood up. She says, well, Roy, is that his name? I said, well, I know he had a different name in heaven, but that's his name on earth, and it feels like it was him. And then, so I get back on track of what I was trying to share. I said, he stood up and he turned around. She said, we're not supposed to turn around in that room. I said, I know, I remember, but he did. And he says he did. In his own book, he verifies, that he did. And there was a lot of things that she is verifying just because of her confronting me. She's trying to check me out and make sure I'm telling what she remembers and so forth. And everything was just following through, So we were remembering. And we all talk about that we were all how we planned to come here. We planned our life. We participated in choosing things that would be difficult, trials to learn to overcome. We did things to even choose about our physical disabilities. I didn't want to be blind, but I did choose, because we had different things on a choice to choose in our life. And I would try one, pick one up and put it over this life book. And we all talk about this life book. When it's like on a big book, but it's sitting on a table kind of like this but flat, and when you looked at it, the pages were pure white, What's make that noise? It's the water. I heard it too, and what is that? So when you picked something up and held it over the white book, it would show you what it would do in your life, because the pages would just start coming alive, and you would see in your life as if it was happening right then and there, like looking at TV, but it was real. Well, it's like you here. I mean, you're right here in real life, sitting there. But it was sort of like that. So it's TV, but totally enhanced. So we see how these choices that we tried by putting it over the book and saw how it affected our life. And I said, no, I don't want to experience that. So I put it back. And then I would go down, and the things that were at the top were the more difficult things. And it got easier and easier as you went down. So I eventually went down to the middle. When I tried that one, I said, I think I can handle that. So I kept it. So I didn't want it to be too easy, because I knew that the more difficult things you do, the more it benefits us. But it's our choices to how severe we want to go through things, and it's our choice. What we want to experience here on earth. But there is a lot of things that we learn more through the difficult things in life than we do when it's easy. I mean, if everything's easy sailing, you're not really learning. You're just sailing through life here. And to me, in that realm, I thought, well, that's a waste of a lifetime to come here and not learn. So I was going to learn something. So I tried to not be too severe, but yet not too easy. Tried it somewhere in the middle. And I remember choosing, one of the things I chose was to have a difficult marriage, because that was very common. Most of us, majority of us, chose that. And I said, well, if everybody else is doing it, I could do it too. So I actually chose that. And then I had a guide with me who else was standing there with me, helping me decide, because he had more experience in coming to Earth. And so he wanted to help me with these decisions, and he also chose my marriage to be difficult. And I said, well, whoa, that's a double dose of marriage problems. I don't know if I can handle that, but I remember it, and he thought that I could handle it. So I said, well, I'm trusting you. I wasn't shown the details of what would entail with all the problems, but I trusted. And I've suffered a lot, but and I'm still going through some difficulties, but everybody has their problems to go through. I chose something else. There's a number of times we're told to choose different things, and I chose something else, but I can't remember what it was. And then my guide chose
the physical activity.
My physical. Oh.
You chose glasses and light.
Oh, is it?
No, you chose that.
You chose it.
Oh, yeah.
Because of what important.
Right. I didn't want to be blind, because I knew that I needed to have my sight, so I chose to have poor eyesight. And I've been wearing glasses since I was in 2nd grade. So, a lot of things that
You actually, when you chose that you would have weight issues, it was always hard for her to lose weight. Unless she actually
my whole life, I never had a weight problem until after I got married. And now that I remember, because I'm always trying to go on diets and stuff, but I wasn't concerned with how my appearance was on earth. But I knew that was supposed to help me in my life somehow, with vanity, because a lot of people get stuck on vanity, and it kind of takes them off course of where they really should go. So it's not good to be so attached to ourselves. We want to look good and presentable to other people, but still, the scheme of things, it's more important what we're here for, and what we're supposed to learn, and what we're supposed to help others, sharing love, and being kind to one another, help each other along the way. And so there's a lot of things that I remember, and that I had no idea before these awakenings came to me. I had no idea, because I thought I was a victim. I hated the way my life turned out. It's not what I wanted. But yet I remember I had a double dose of marriage problems. So I did agree to it. So I'm supposed to learn something from it. So it changed my perspective. I'm not a victim anymore. So now I look at that, okay, what am I supposed to learn through this? And how can I be kinder? How can I help the situation, instead of just being argumentative, I'm still argumentative, but it's not as much. I have a better understanding. And also my son, I thought I was so blessed to be given my son. And then my guy chose him to be a difficult problem. I said, well, what kind of, a child is a blessing, how can that be difficult? I said, well, you know, parents have trouble raising the kids or whatever. But my son has some, he's bipolar and schizophrenic, and so it's a difficult challenge, and I love him to death. But it's been a roller coaster in dealing with him. And I want him to be happy, and I just worry about that. I would receive dreams, and then they would help soothe me with this, because one time I dreamed like a fish tank, but in this fish tank my son wanted to be a fish. And I'm there like, but you're a person. I said, you have so much abilities as a person, you could do so much more than a fish. And I was afraid because the bigger fish would come and eat them and swallow them. And I said, you don't want that life, you're a person, you know, in this dream. But that sort of helped me realize, you know, my son's life is what he chooses, and I have to let it go. It's not what I want for him, but what he wants for himself. And I realized, you know, we all are here to explore life on our own terms, what we chose it to be. So it's not what I want for him, but what he wants for himself. And, you know, we can't judge other people because we don't know what they're here to learn. And so they helped me a lot by having these dreams, visions, things that would come to me to help me understand and help me let go. Gosh, I can go on, there's so much. Sure.
So does everyone get to choose a path or not? Because say you chose that your son would be difficult, but if he didn't choose to be difficult, then how would that work? Do you know what I mean? So does everyone choose their path, or do some get to plan and some don't?
It's like you're given these, like the titles, like the heading. Like, I'm going to have some type of difficulty with my son, but I didn't know the details. Well, no matter who he was going to be, no matter who I was going to be married to, I would have a child that was like that. But this was a person that God would fit, that would fit there, you know, to be.
I think it's the willingness. In heaven, if he wasn't willing, they would have found someone else.
Okay. So sometimes they say that sometimes it's a big act of love when you are that loving spirit, and you're going to come on earth to be that difficult one for that person, for that person to endure and become a higher spirit by actually going through all those challenges and and still stay in that state of love and compassion and mold yourself. We all, you know, through our difficulty, we are molded into better people generally, because we understand how people are hurting, and so to come and be the bed role is an act of love to help you understand more things about love and lack of.
Yeah, everything is related to love. Yeah, because it taught me a lot of things and how to deal with him, and how. Like my husband didn't have these memories and things like that, so he just like wants to give up on him. I will never give up on my son, and you know, if that's the way he is the rest of his life, then that's what he chose. I'm always hopeful for him, but I'm not in charge of that. And yeah.
You feel that the list had to do with the spots?
A little bit.
People have to learn, so if you have these spots, these are the choices you...
That had something to do with it, yeah. Because the spots would show God the areas where we needed these lessons. We needed to learn about certain things, and so we had to have difficulties, because that's where we learn the most, when we go through all these trials on earth.
Still have the free will connected.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we still have true will.
Spots, I mean,
Yeah, yeah. We can, you know, decide not to be kind, and which many people do, and they don't try to become better. So they just keep their spots, yeah. But then they have the opportunity, you know, in another time
to work on those
yeah,
spots.
yeah. So they're always there to work on, yeah.
Can you choose your lifespan? Or no?
yeah, you choose that, right?
In a way, we're given sort of like we need to accomplish these things, but we may accomplish them in our lifetime or we may not, but that's our choice. We're given like this is our assignment. You know, so we have soul agreements. We meet a lot of people that interact with us on Earth in that realm. And so a lot of times when we meet people on Earth, they say, "You seem so familiar to me." And because you had planned on this before, making plans. Tam talked about that a lot. She would meet people in the grocery store and says, "I remember them, and I remember I was supposed to teach her this, help her with the situation." She was in the grocery store with her daughter, or a baby, and the baby was crying and crying, and she couldn't get the baby to stop crying. So Tam went over to her, and she didn't tell her she remembered her, but she said, you know, she showed her how to talk to the baby, and the baby stopped crying. And the mother was so thankful. She said, "Thank you." Simple acts like that we chose to come together on Earth to help each other. So these are acts of kindness that we wanted that we planned. You know, it's the simplest things. You know, you never know, but they mean a lot in the spirit, because it's anything acts of kindness and love is what evolves us, and it helps our whole world, because it affects the energy in our world of positive and negative. And that's what I was talking about in my second book, how things interact, and the more positive choices we make that's loving, the more we're elevating ourselves into the spirit, and it makes the whole world elevated, because everybody's energy affects the whole planet, you know. Yes, Stephen?
You know, with the love, it's an unrequited love. There's no necessarily any physical connection with it. And there's no ego involved with it. It's just love and feeling love.
Selfless.
Which means that you accept as well as you give. And the entrapment is not there, because you're not giving something to get something back.
Right, right.
You're just effusing, just letting it go and have it.
It's a selfless love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Self is less love, and love is more selfless.
So when we come to Earth, we go through a veil, because it's difficult to be on Earth with these memories. I have the veil that's thicker than Roy's, because he recalled heaven since the day he was born, and he remembers being in the womb, and before he went into her womb. I mean, everything. And I didn't connect to anything until I was 39 years old. That's when then it just flooded into me. I said, but it was time, because Roy had just published his book in 1999, and Karen published her book in 2001, and I met Roy in 2001. So I mean, all that was perfect timing. It just worked out, and we did plan this. I remember planning that. I remember in that room up in the light, and we were talking about our planning on Earth and how our missions interacted. Sometimes we had our individual missions, and sometimes we're connected to one another, but everything was still connected to God's mission. We all had a part in it. Everybody does. And I'm trying to think, the point I was going to say.
But you're going to meet together here.
Yeah.
There's seven of you all together?
Yeah, 8.
8?
No,
Oh, yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8, yeah.
5 women.
5 women, and there was 3 males that we came as a group to share about Prebirth Memories. But I don't know if I finished that. That is what God, when Roy went into God's presence, he said, I want to bring that back, that message back about our pre-existence. And, some of the other ones in that room or whatever area, when we were discussing it, they said, no, you can't do that. Everybody's veiled. And he said, but that message hasn't been brought to earth in a long time. And God said, okay, I'll let you. And I remember when God told him he can do that, I said, boy, I wish I can come on earth and have pre-birth memories. And I didn't know, I didn't realize it, but here I am, I have them. So I said, well, it helps us because we're supporting each other, and it gives us more credibility because we're not just one person sharing it, but we're all sharing the same thing, the same story. I didn't know these people, and they're talking about the same thing, So it helps us, instead of being alone, to have support.
I think you're going to explain the importance of the veil.
Yes, it is very hard. Thank you, because my mind wanders. I have so much in my mind. Sometimes I get overwhelmed. But the importance of the veil, because if we have full memory realm, it's hard to live on earth, because that realm is so different, because that realm is so loving and kind, and you know, you don't feel threatened whatsoever. Everybody loves each other. You know, it don't matter who you are. You know, we're a happy family. But on this earth, everything's has so much contradictions, and you know, you got wars and problems of killing and stealing, and I mean all these things that doesn't happen in that realm. So it's quite a big contrast. And so when you're living on this world and know how it could be, you're like, I choose that one. You know, that's the way I want to live. But then how you do it here. And then when you try to share it with other people, they think that you're making it up. And they already think, oh, you're just dreaming it. And I'm like, how can I have all these memories? How can that all be, you know, made up? I mean, it's just ridiculous to even think that, you know. So, and all of us having the same memories, I mean, that's no. And we're all brothers and sisters, we're all connected, no matter what culture we are, no matter what skin color we are, no matter, we're all one, you know, we're all, it doesn't matter about religion, because, you know, they're different formats, but they all came from the same source. They all came from the Spirit. We're all connected to God. So even though, you know, God came and showed this person, and they interpreted it the way they did and shared it with their people. Another person got a message and they became the prophets, you know. And so they would share, and that became like what they call their religion. And another one theirs, and I mean, it just kept on going and going and going. But they all really, if you look at them, and I would study the major religions, and they all had the same core values of just what, do unto others as you would have them unto us. But they all said that. It's about being loving and compassionate and merciful, you know, all, that's the goal. That's the core of binding us together, not about dividing us. And so, I mean, if you really understood it the right way, there wouldn't be any wars done in religion. You know, none of them, because that's when they're going astray. You know. So, another question? Yes.
I wanted to make a comment. It's interesting that you mentioned that it was around 1999 or 2001, which is probably around the time that I began to have a series of dreams where I was interacting with what appeared to be angelic beings. And
cool.
Every time, and I don't mean seeing, you know, wings and that sort of thing, but beings that I didn't know and who were always helping me, and at some point in the dream, I would receive an infusion of love from them, and especially one of the last dreams when I said, I don't ever want to leave. And I was actually asleep and having this dream and waking out of it and knowing that something very supernatural had taken place. And when I was back in my body, it felt very sort of rubbery-like, as if I'd been somewhere. And to feel the level of love, it was like a huge hose of love that was gushing into my heart. And I remember hearing a little flutter that sounded like it was on the blinds in our bedroom. And I told my husband, I said, I think something is in here. And I thought it was a bird or something because it sounded like a little flutter. And he was like, what? And, you know, turned on the light, that sort of thing, and looked around, and there was nothing there. And then when I walked into the bathroom, because at that point I was a little bit shaken, the closet in the bathroom, the door was slightly ajar, it wasn't closed. And it began to move towards me.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was something, it was obvious that this is something for you, this is something special. Because we were, you know, like you mentioned with the husband and that sort of thing. But my thing is, why did it have to take that period of time before I began to realize the power of love for humans and in my life? And it really began to shift my perspective, and even about my religion, which is Islam. You know, I was raised a Christian. But what is it that we can help our children to realize? I don't know if you have any answers to help children connect with love.
Mm-hmm. That's, no matter what religion we are all connected to God through love. And if we do the opposite, like I said, a positive, negative, if you know, there's groups of no matter what religion, there's always going to be those strands that are more violent. You know, when they're doing that, they're not following love. Those are the ones that went astray.
Exactly.
No matter what brand of religion it is. And you know, if we could teach them, we're not to hate one another, but we love each other. If everybody just did that, we could come together instead of fighting one another and appreciate our diversity.
I'm wondering if they're experiencing that, because up until that point in my life, which was right around 40, I hadn't experienced love like that as a being on this earth before, not that I ever remembered.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's something that there's a way that you can kind of help children realize and to experience love on that level.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe they can avoid a lot of the
Yeah.
selfishness and the ego, because I was really like a, you know, to me, even though I was always spiritually seeking, and that's the way sort of my mom reared us, more spiritually than religious, but it's as if you want children and younger people to realize this at an earlier age, instead of
I do
making
too.
all of these egotistical
Mm-hmm.
mistakes and, you know, selfishness and, you know, not being open.
Ever since, you know, when I had with my children, I tried to teach them, and that was one of my memories too, is I was going to be blessed with another child, which is my daughter, but she was not going to be a difficulty for me. She was going to be help me and support me and sharing what I'm doing here now. And look, she's right here doing it. So everything that I saw came true.
Yeah, well, that could be a good example, as I was raised like this, and so it was all very normal to me.
Yeah, I was open to her. She knew my experiences.
It was when I finally realized most people didn't think that way, and I thought that was really bizarre. So I guess it's just the consciousness level of what you're giving to the children. Because I was just raised like that anyways, you know? And so it was very natural.
And that's one of the mission of people that had near-death experience or pre-birth memory, is to bring consciousness to this world, that the values of love and who we really are could help more everyone raise the kids, or the environment, the school environment. We have, Marie-Jo and I have a friend in Ivory Coast who is a near-death experiencer, and he would love to start an orphanage where actually you can teach the children with the memory of, you know, of pre-birth or after, you know, near-death experience. You can start teaching them the way of love.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I wish
that would be
I
the
wish
ideal.
all
It's a good world if we can start.
I wish all religions did that with their children, instead, you know, them trying to capture them and making them soldiers. I'm like, no, teach them to love one another, you know. That's the message. And you know, if you want them to have a better world, you got to start with them, because once they are conditioned to this world, they're brainwashed, and they go astray, and they do all the things that the fighting continues. You have to start when they're young.
If we knew growing up we chose these difficulties, it would change your perspective. And when you had a difficulty, you think, okay, I chose it, what am I learning from it? And if I don't learn from it, I'm going to keep repeating it.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
When you said that, I was like, oh, I chose this.
Yeah. So if you have a difficult challenge, think, what am I supposed to learn through
Right,
this?
and I want to change it, but I'm thinking, oh, that's interesting. What if you grew up though knowing when you hit difficulties like, no, this is part of your plan, so learn from it and move past it and get to the next one. I
Right.
think that'd be important. I mean, it is part of your love, but I think
Right.
instead of people being resentful,
Right.
maybe.
We should not be resentful, you know, because they're all learning experiences that we planned to do this. And you know, the difficulties we choose, they're teaching us how to handle life and how to handle one another. So if we just get that perspective, instead of fighting back all the time, you know, it's for a reason, you know, that these pop up.
That book
Which one?
I brought you.
Yeah. My daughter got this from her life. She teaches Sunday school. She followed my footsteps. I did that too, teaching children at a Unity church. And this was in the library. It's called My Invisible Friends. And it's by Michelle Whitedove. And it's talking about pre-birth memories.
Michelle Whitedove.
Whitedove. Yeah, it's amazing. She's a psychic medium. Karen Baldwin is too. She does the same thing. Both of them were used in the police detectives to try to locate things and stuff. But see, she talks about, you know, being up in heaven and looking down on earth. All of us talk about this, they see it beforehand who their parents are going to be and choosing them. She's telling the whole story, and it's so cool. She just told me this a week ago. And I'm just so thrilled. I said, you know, this is something that I wanted to do. And I see even the style, that's how I would draw pictures. I said, no, I don't have to do it. She did it. So I'm happy. But she's talking about pre-birth memories and about look at the rainbows.
Angels are always working behind the scenes in your life.
Yeah.
Giving you those hints and guiding you in certain directions.
Roy talked about the rainbows, remember? And yeah, so this is really amazing about the child coming into the womb. You know, so I'm just excited. This is for, you know, written towards kindergarten through 2nd grade, I think she said. But it's just amazing. I said, I'm so happy she's teaching and she's trying to reach out to the children. But you know, regular whatever religion you are, you know, and like if I were to show this in church, they would. At a regular church, Unity's fine with it.
I'm going to get tomorrow in church.
But yeah, but if I were to read this to the kids at church, the congregation probably would have a fit because they talk about pre-birth memories. But it's true. So I mean, they're the ones that are blocked. It does. It does.
A lot about pre-birth memories and about.
It just flashes. It end.
It's just that it's not
perfect.
God, but you can find scriptures that talks about it, and
Yeah.
God also said that Jesus was in his womb before time.
Yeah, yeah.
was.
I knew you before you were in your
Before
womb.
you were born, I knew you before you were born.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that he knew the spirit before he was born. And, it's amazing that, you know, I think creation, when it says that God created, we are created in spirit form first, in the light, and then we come on earth. But that part of living in the light is never taught here because nobody has a memory, so we are not going to teach something that.
Or if they did, because people have in the past, but they were murdered for saying it. So I'm like, what can you do? You tell them and they don't believe you, and they want you to shut up.
Those of us who haven't had the experience, how do we get past the veil? Or can?
That depends on what you chose.
Okay.
If you chose to do that, you will, you know. And there's perfect timing for everything. So, I mean, we don't remember when the timing is, but when you're supposed to remember and you break through that veil, it'll happen. You know, like it says, the verse in the Bible, it says, you know, where Jesus entered through the veil, as an, you know, he went through it before so that we could follow him. That's what it was talking about, going through that veil, and so that we could discover who we really are.
So then, you know, like you were saying, it was revealed to you when you were around 40 or so, and you had this infusion of love, and now you feel differently, and it sounds like you feel differently. Yet why don't we all, you know, why can't that happen to us all when we're young, and so that we grow up knowing this?
I wish that, and I have prayed for that. I wish everybody would know it at an earlier age, but it's all to do with free will. God does not interfere with free will. Because things would happen throughout my life as a childhood that I didn't understand. Like I saw a ghost one time, and I shared it with my mom, and she said, "Oh, that was a dream." You know, I'm there. It wasn't a dream. You know, so I could have, you know, denied it and just put it like, "Oh, it was a dream," and then I'm shutting the door to that explanation of what the truth was. But I didn't. I said, "Well, I want to find out, and I just don't know," so I just put it in the back of my mind is on a bookshelf back there. And then I found out, you know, that what I saw, you know, was real, and I got confirmations. And, you know, it comes, but it might take 30, 40, 50 years before you get the confirmations, you know, but there's a reason, because if we learn things too early before we're ready, is like Scripture says, you know, you could break the vessel, you know, because we're not ready for it. There's a perfect timing, and we have to be gentle, you know, because we don't want to shatter anybody, you know, especially if people are really ingrained and brainwashed to think a certain way, and you tell them this, they think it scares them because it's so bizarre. I mean, it scared me in the beginning. I was just the same way, and so I understand, you know, people being fearful of it.
And it's an honor, like we are all in this room and you are here. It's an honor because we are connected with the afterlife, even if you didn't have the experience, but just you being here and interested. It means that your time has come to be connected and to awaken to understand things. It's amazing. It's an honor. It's a big honor. I mean, how many millions and millions of people will never even live their life with hatred and anger, and then we are here, we are in this place, and we are receiving all that knowledge.
Sharing your story.
It is,
yes. Instead of keeping yourself shut off.
Yes,
And that will affect the children.
It will affect others, yes. That's what we do. We want all other people to awaken and to be able to live a better life here with peace, like you were saying so well, Caroline. The peace and what once you know that, like what Sandy was saying, once you know that you plan it, you live with more peace. You receive the challenges. It's hard, it's painful, but you recover quicker, because you know, okay, that's not real, that's a matrix here for me to study, let's move on. You recover faster than any other person who would keep their resentment for all their life.
Holding on to resentments hurts us a lot, keeps us back.
In this day and time, there are more of the indigo children that are being born
Right,
than there were
right.
40 or 50 years ago.
Yeah, because it's time.
You know, having been an indigo child, there wasn't a path for me to go through, except the traditional path, which was so restricting.
Right, right.
But now the paths are open.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as, for instance, being here and being realized, it's like a stepping stone. When you do a step up, more things are revealed to you.
True.
Because you have a more firm base to go to. And then as you get comfortable, you can go to the next level.
Right.
It's like getting used, it's like being a fireman and what it's like first to go up a ladder that's only 20 feet tall, and then to go up one that's 50 feet tall, another one's 100 feet tall. And be able to do it with purpose and confidence, so that when you get up there, you can do things instead of being frozen by the height. And it's the same thing in life with our spiritual path. And for those of us that have experienced the other side of the veil, and I look at the veil as sort of like, at times, there's a spigot through that veil that I can open up and just go, and then it's a new world for me again.
It's amazing. Ben went.
I'd actually like to hear what this young lady had to say.
Thank you. I just had a question about, so I just feel like in the current day, there's just so much hate being broadcast around the world, particularly in the news. A lot of our world leaders, there's that toxicity that's coming through almost on a daily basis. And for me, at first it made me really angry and hateful. And I at least had the presence of mind, even though I haven't had any kind of experience, to say like, okay, I'm adding more to that energy.
True.
So I have
You're
to
very
stop
smart.
that.
You're very good.
To stop that energy coming out of myself. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, I know hate isn't the answer. And trying to at least kind of connect to someone who is very different from you, it's still very hard because you feel like this person probably isn't going to change at all, but I know that hating them isn't the right answer. So then how do you handle those types of situations where you know someone has that very hardened view of life and they're not going to change or possibly not going to change? How do you deal with that and being in this planet of people who are sending out a lot of hate into the world?
It is hard. I have been there, you know, trying to share with others because they were hateful and trying to share things, but I kind of try to gauge where they are, because I know if you say too much, they just think you're nuts or something. I have to be careful what I say. I can't be open, you know, just put it out there, you know, for them. So I just have to be very gentle. And even though they may listen to this, their choice. They have free will. I always have to respect their will where they want to be. But they have no right to judge people. Nobody has a right to judge other people. And they have no right to kill people. I mean, from the very beginning with Cain and Abel, what was the problem there? You know, Cain murdered Abel. That is the whole problem here. We're trying to kill off the competition here. You know, instead of saying, you know, to love his brother Abel, you know, instead of killing each other. It's crazy. So.
Well said. The competition. And to say, sometimes when you see that toxicity, I'm sorry,
toxicity.
That's a difficult word in English.
Toxicity. Yeah, okay.
How do you say it?
Toxicity.
Toxicity. And when you see that in the world, or in your life, or in people, and in the world you were talking about the news in the world, sometimes that toxicity is highlighted so that we can actually learn that, oh, we don't want to be that way, that's terrible. And you get like, and then you say, well, I want to be a good and loving person.
Right.
So wherever in the world, I mean, I'm not talking about one specific situation, I'm just saying in general in the world, when evil comes, it actually, you have to react to it. And how do I react to it?
Right. Are you going to contribute to that negative energy or not? Yeah.
I don't want to be that way, and that's how we learn.
Right.
As well, you know. Ben, you wanted to say something?
Oh, I don't know. I could have a lot of thoughts about all this, but it was really about, for those who haven't experienced some of this stuff directly, there are many different ways to do that, many ways to have these kind of overt spiritual experiences. You said that you actually began as a seeker, as did I as a child. And a lot of that is just being open to the fact that this could be possible.
Yes.
This all stuff really started when Raymond Moody actually gave us the term near-death experience and all that. Yeah, that's when this really began to balloon, but keeping an open mind, understanding, as you did, when you said, well, I think I did see a ghost, I'm not sure, I'll just put it in the back of the mind, but I'm not going to deny it.
Right.
We're taught to deny this stuff at a really early age. And the more we can not deny it and at least be open, really our discernment, our mental discernment, the discernment of our attention. People say there's no free will. With every single breath and heartbeat, we choose where we put our attention and where we put our thoughts. And what we put our attention and our thoughts on, that is our free will.
Right.
So anyway, these are just different ways to begin exploring this stuff. Then just kind of anything that intrigues you that could be related to this, just kind of follow into it. You know, many people are awakened to these things in dreams. So, and other ways as well. You know, I mean, it's a really interesting time to be alive. I'm sure there's toxicity everywhere, and that's one reason a lot of us are here right now, just to try and help with that.
That's why I'm trying to share, because if I'm bringing awareness and I have a message that I feel is important for people to learn how this world is and how to overcome this world and bring it up, raise up that positive energy, the love in this world can be better. We could all live together more peacefully if we just love one another. It's not really that difficult. Why can't we do it? You know? So.
Would you mind sharing when you all left Earth and you were in that temple? Left heaven to come on Earth, a group of people.
Oh, out on the courtyard? Out in the courtyard, okay.
The courtyard.
Okay.
That I saw too.
Okay. So, you know, I've told this story so many times, you know, you're very familiar with it. Oh, you haven't? Okay. Okay, so when we were leaving this area, to me it felt like it was sort of inside, but yet there's no walls and no ceiling, but it's just perfect. You're in the whiteness of light. But when we went, we were escorted, to go in this area. I call it the courtyard because ahead of me, there's these steps, a long flight of steps, and there was water flowing down the middle of them. And I went down, because we were fixing to leave there to come here. And I said, I was aware that when I left heaven that I would forget, because we all go through an amnesia. And I said, I don't want to forget this place. I want to remember so I can come back. Even though I can't go back, I will be going back. I wanted to remember to help me go back. So I turned around and said, what can I do to help me remember this place? And so I turned around and I was looking at this building, this white marble pearlescent, just beautiful. And I'm looking up on the side of it, and there's just like a gold embossment, but I believe they were real. I felt like they were real live grapes, but they were gold. And they were grown up along the column and across the top of it. And I was just staring at it, trying to burn it into my memory. I said, don't forget this, remember this, remember this. And at that time, that's when Tam was at the top of the steps, and she started coming down the steps, and she's looking at me, and she turned to her right, to see what I was looking at. And she said, it's beautiful, isn't it? And I said, yeah, but that's not why I'm looking at it. I want to burn it into my memory. I want to remember this place. And she just waved, nodded her head. And then Roy remembers this place too. He says, don't you remember we put our hands in that water? And I believe that water is the part that gives us the amnesia, that when we go through it, we forget. And I jumped over it. I didn't want to go all the way immersed in it. But if we do, we forget. But that was part of it, because when you come to Earth, most of us, we're not, that's part of the mission, because it's hard to live on Earth with those memories. And some of the things that I saw in my connection with the Spirit that taught me things, showed me the very beginning, showed me creation. I saw how everything was formed, and it was so fast, and it's a long story too. But I saw, even the first physical beings of a man and a woman. When they first came here, they didn't have that veil, and they had memories of heaven, but they were here because it's not because they ate the apple. That has a symbolism. It's because they chose to learn about this realm with the positive and negative contrast, because they want to know more about life. They want to know who they were, who is God, what's the difference. They had questions. And so God wanted to make a place like this world so that you can explore. It's a perfect setup to explore from one extreme to the other. There's not as many planets like this, in creation that has so much diversity. And we looked at this like this was a jewel planet, because it had everything all together on one planet. You had the contrast. And this is a difficult realm, but you learn the most in this realm. And we wanted to come here because we thought it's so beautiful. You got the mountains, and you have the deserts, and you have the ice polar caps, and all these extremes, but they're so beautiful together, and we could choose from one thing to the other all in the same lifetime. So it was such a beautiful place to go that we wanted to come here. We would look forward to it. But yet, it was just still something about me. I didn't want to leave there because I knew I was going to forget it. And so, is that covering kind of what you want me to cover? Okay.
Beautiful.
Okay.
And then even you all left at the same time, but you have different ages here because the time is different in heaven.
Karen left before I did. She's 10 years older than me. And right after her, Roy went. And I think he's 8 months younger than her. And then I followed Roy. I'm 10 years younger than Roy. And Tam came in after me. But, before she left, she wanted to peek in to see what it's like down there. So she was telling me this story. She said she looked into this spiritual window, and when she looked in, she saw a little girl tugging in the living room. She was pulling against her mother, and she's digging her toes into the carpet. And I'm like, that happened to me. She's telling my story. I didn't tell that to nobody. I have never shared that. There was an experience when I was asleep on the couch. I mean, I don't know how old I was. I was just way before going to school. And my mom woke me up. She says, "You need to go to bed." And so I looked over towards my dad, because she always said, I always gave him a kiss goodnight. And he was at the chair in front of the window that went outside, and the door was behind him, where I had a attic bedroom that my dad fixed up for me and my brother. And when I looked over to him to tell him goodnight, I saw these colors, just like if you had a snow globe and you shook it, and you have all these colors just going all around them. And I'm there, "What's that?" And Mom just looked at me and she says, "What's what?" I said, "All those colors over there by Daddy. I never saw that before." She says, "What are you talking about?" And she says, "Go over there." She thought I was trying not to go to bed. I said, "No, I was afraid." And then she said, pushing me, and I'm there, "No, I don't want to go over there." And she thought I was, trying to disobey her. And I'm like, "No, Mom, what is that?" And she couldn't see it, but I could. And when Tam was telling me that story, I realized those sparkles was her looking into my life. That was her presence, the way I've seen the sparkles. Because she was telling me that story. I said, and she said the spiritual window would appear. And then I said, now it makes sense why I saw those sparkles. I mean, that happened such a long time ago, but now I need to know why. So it's a lot of things that we connected with that I would never have known. But I did write about that in my book. Mary Jo.
Well, I was struck by when you were sharing in relation to the book that your daughter had recommended that was used at for where she was teaching. And I really believe that's a great mechanism to bring forward the concepts that we're talking about, using various forms of the arts, whether it's a television show, or it's a movie, or
songs,
books that are written for different age groups, because our consciousness is shaped by our experiences, both in multiple realms. And we really, when we get irritated, and a lot of us do with what's going on in the world, the way to counterbalance it is by using our gifts in the realms that we can to bring forward the ideas that are important to us. And when I watch that my grandkids, when they're playing with different things or watching different shows, I'm just really aware of what that is, how that's influencing them and who they're going to become.
Right.
And I keep thinking, how come we don't take the time to create what we really want?
Right. This world can be a lot better if we were conscious of what we choose.
And this is just kind of a silly story, but for me it really had an important impact. Father's Day is coming up in a couple of weeks. We just had Mother's Day, right? So we're looking at how do we honor our mothers, how do we honor our fathers, and we're looking at generations, our mothers and us as mothers, and then maybe our children or our grandchildren, taking these values and what are we doing with it. And I was struck by my invisible friends, and I thought we can create materials like this that convey the values that are important to us. And when I was walking through the Hallmark store after I went and bought some stamps or did something, I was looking at all the things they had, and I go, and all at once I got the hit, I want to do something for Father's Day, but my 3 sons as fathers, because I have 3 boys and they have children. And then I started looking at how can I convey the concepts that I notice what they're doing well in raising children, tied into this and the bigger stories that we want to teach. And I was absolutely convinced I have to do this, because it's an invisible friends. It's a story taking that forward to pass it on to multiple generations.
Mm-hmm.
So as they open the book and say, oh, this is from my mom on Mother's Day or on Father's Day, and they're reading it to their children, but then they have that to pass it on.
Right.
So it's multiple generations of taking what we value and bringing it forward.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at, the problem we're having with school shootings and things like that, and the mental health issues and those dynamics, a lot of them we're not dealing with the bigger picture associated with taking responsibility, how to help people to have a different vision in life.
Mm-hmm.
When they close the door to the mental health, oh, well, we're going to
Yeah.
shut this facility down and
Yeah.
push them out there. I go, excuse
Yeah.
me, you're going to reap the after
Repercussions.
effects of that,
Yeah.
and then flood the market with what you're doing around the video games that are tied
Violent.
into these
They're
concepts.
violent video games. That's
that's
what they're learning.
I'm not saying these are all the doom and gloom kind of thing. I'm just saying a way to counteract them
Mm-hmm.
is with this other kind of value system. And if each of us take a responsibility in wherever our world takes us to pass on these concepts,
Mhm.
I think we can turn it around. And
We
I
can.
loved what was said, that I got really angry with this, and it was when you were saying, I got really angry with this. I go, yeah, I have to watch that one too. I go, all right, now I got to
Yeah.
turn it around, because if we don't,
We're just reaping the same thing, the violence. We've got to stop it.
It repeats itself.
Yeah.
until we learn.
Yeah.
What helps me is to know, like you were saying, that this world is a world of the two, the duality, and that this world is one of balance. And when we see the negativity, we need to know that also existing on earth to balance it is that positive.
Yeah.
So that, that lessons need to be taught in these ways. It's like it's a perfect setup.
Right. We learn a lot through the negativity, but we still got to bring back that balance. And if in the news, you basically hear bad stuff, and then it affects us. We get the energy, and we feed off of it. It makes us angry, and we need to bring it back into balance. Bring that love back in, and if you see something makes you mad, how can you do to make it better? It's brought up to.
It's perfect training.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is true that energy-wise, the negative and evil and darker energy are heavier matter than the light energy. Light energy is lighter, and that's what makes it so difficult for us here to bring that world, because the thickness of the darker energy is a thicker energy, and that's, we think we do nothing, but we all actually emanate energy, whether it's good or negative. And if we don't speak, but we just think positive thoughts and loving thoughts, it actually reflects on the other person. And we were just watching that at the Rhine Center with when we went the last time. Remember who was the neurosurgeon was there? We were there too.
Alexander.
Eben.
Alexander, a renowned neurosurgeon with a near-death experience, and they were explaining that scientifically now it's actually proven that every one of us are emanating energy around us constantly.
It's
So it's
70s
like a
actually.
cycle, and it's proven
Yeah,
scientifically. So what are we getting out will actually, if you speak to somebody, or if you don't even speak, but you just next to somebody, that person will receive some of your energy. And that's why sometimes we feel so sad, and we don't know why. Suddenly we feel totally depressed. Sometimes
You're
we
picking
feel
up their
totally
energy.
depressed and we don't know why. And we start crying. Why am I crying? And then suddenly, I've made that test. When I cry for no reason, suddenly I'm thinking I'm picking up on somebody else's energy.
Right.
Believe me, when I do that, instantly I'm not crying anymore, and I'm not sad anymore. It's gone. And so wherever we are at work, everywhere, we don't have to speak to somebody, but we know that we're emanating the right thing. And when you multiply that to the world, that's why the world is not going well, if everybody's emanating that anger, that violence. And, so it just, everybody steal from each other, and it's just like a big volcano. But we are here to just bring the opposite, you know?
Right. I mean, love it conquers the darkness. It conquers all the things that are negative. Love is the strongest power there is. So, I mean, if we want to get above all the arguing and the fighting and everything and the wars, love is the answer. How many times have we heard that, but we don't do it? Or, you know, this world still has wars. It will never end until we have a change of heart, you know, to choose love, to react with love. But my daughter, though, she's an example of being raised with me. She was born after I had my near-death experience in 1984. She's born in 87, and she's teaching, you know, at a Unity church. So it's got to start while kids are young, because I mean, if she was an adult and then, yeah, you got to be open. It's hard to teach somebody out of the blue, oh, you know, what you were taught isn't, you know, exactly right. You got the truth, but little bits and pieces are misunderstood. So let's get back on track to the message, you know, of that God wants us to love one another and respect one another. And, you know, that's what it's all. And if we all did that, wouldn't it be a beautiful world? I mean, we got such beautiful mountains and the scenery from one thing to another. How beautiful it was. That's why we came here, to explore it, because it's such an amazing place, and it doesn't have to be so difficult.
I think there was another children's book, if anybody was interested to write down. So you got My Invisible Friends. What's that? The Little Soul in the Sun. Is that Neil Donald Walsh? Do you remember?
He did a children's book? Neil Donald Walsh?
If anybody wants to write down The Little Soul
He did
in the Sun.
Conversations with God.
It's a children's book based on.
Oh, okay.
And that one's fantastic.
I think you did tell me about that, but I hadn't seen it.
The Little Soul in the Sun.
Oh, okay.
That was great. It shows how they prepare before coming here, and how one is he wanted to learn forgiveness, and how his friend decided to be what on earth it would seem like your pain, but
an enemy.
Blessing, and they were getting ready to come here to prepare themselves to come here to do that. It was fantastic though.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah, they said, and he said, just remember, oh yeah, she said the one that was going to come here that was going to be a difficulty for them. She said, just remember who I naturally am, because I might forget myself, and someone else might have to come back to remind us who we are. It was a great book though. That was a little children's book. The Little Soul in the Sun.
It did turn off, because it probably is about to turn off. I wanted to show you something, but I can't. I have to take this off. Let me turn this.